Hello, I'm Roger Mudd. Welcome to the History Channel. There's a terrifying sensation that many Californians know all too well. It's the rumbling that comes when the ground starts to shake and an earthquake is imminent. Our program tells the story of some of this century's most destructive quakes, including the legendary San Francisco earthquake of 1906 and the recent ones from which Californians are still recovering. You'll hear from people who were there when the earth moved and devastation followed. 3 decades after the great San Francisco quake, a scientist named Charles Richter devised a way to gauge the strength of earthquakes. But his Richter scale is powerless to measure the terror that comes with them. Join us now as the History Channel presents The Wrath of God, Killer Quakes.
In the pre-dawn darkness, there was a sound of approaching thunder, but it didn't come from the sky. It seemed to come from the ground. Then the walls started to rattle, the earth started to ripple, and a city known for its cool was seized by an uncontrollable fear. Earthquake. Los Angeles, January 17, 1994. In 22 seconds, the nation's second largest city was brought to its knees. Infrastructure collapsed. Communications paralyzed. Block after block of buildings erased. For weeks afterwards, the fear drove many thousands to abandon their homes and live in the open air. Thousands more fled the state entirely. And the rest of the country was asking a familiar question. How could people live in a place where there was a virtual certainty of deadly earthquakes? How can you live in the shadow of seismic doom? The question has been asked repeatedly, ever since the great cataclysm of almost a century before. Between the end of the shaking and the beginning of the screaming, there was a moment of perfect calm. A moment in which every San Franciscan searched his or her soul. The mayor of the city was wondering what he was made of. Eugene Schmitz hadn't done much in 5 years of office except line his pockets with graft. Now the man called Handsome Gene confronted the biggest emergency ever faced by an American mayor. Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan must have felt vindicated. His constant warnings about a disaster of this magnitude had fallen on deaf ears. But now that the crisis was upon him, he was one of its first victims. Enrico Caruso was miffed. The Italian superstar had lost his patience with natural disasters. Just the week before, Vesuvius had erupted outside his birthplace. And now this. Frederick Funston felt exhilarated. The hero of the Spanish-American War had missed the excitement of battle. And now, San Francisco had been struck by an enemy more violent than any foreign army. As if by a miracle, new opportunities for glory seemed to have materialized. And in the crystalline calm of that single moment, the image of old San Francisco lingered before being lost forever. In 1906, San Francisco was the preeminent American city of the West Coast. The desert outpost of Los Angeles had barely half her population and little of her worldly sophistication. Some called her the Paris of the Pacific. To native San Franciscans, she was simply the city. Not everyone was so captivated. The south of Market District was among the most miserable slums in America. San Francisco was infamous for her many opium dens and brothels. Her well-dressed gentlemen tended to tolerate, if not patronize them. The city's politicians were notoriously cynical and corrupt. Chief among them, Mayor Eugene Schmitz and boss Abe Roof. But in 1906, vice and corruption were widespread throughout urban America. In most ways, San Francisco was a typical city of the time. In one way, she was wholly original. That was the exotic enclave called Chinatown. It was an uneasy coexistence. Anglos regarded the Chinese with intolerance and superstition. It was widely believed that a system of secret tunnels lay under Chinatown. This dark underworld was the rumored scene of unspeakable crimes, kidnappings, Shanghai killings, white slavery. In reality, there was trouble lurking beneath the streets of Chinatown, but miles below the imaginary tunnels.
There was a sense coming out of the 1860s, the 1870s, the 1880s, this denial that, yes, there are earthquakes, but they're not very bad. California has earthquakes, but they're not bad at all.
In the 70 years preceding the 1906 earthquake, there was a very clear increase in the magnitude 5 and 6 and magnitude 7 activity in the Bay Area. There were some serious earthquakes. People were killed in the Bay Area before 1906.
In 1868, a large quake had rocked nearby Hayward, killing 5 people in San Francisco from falling debris. The earthquake left its mark on one of San Francisco's signature buildings. 1 year after the Hayward quake, construction began on the Palace Hotel, at the time, the largest hotel in the world. The 800 rooms of the palace were steeped in luxury. They were also lavishly quake-proofed. Thick brick walls were reinforced with iron. The hotel had its own water reserves, pumps, and miles of fire hose. It was thought to be impervious to both earthquake and fire. On an April day in 1906, this would be put to the supreme test. On April 10th of that year, Mount Vesuvius had begun erupting. The news from Italy was grim. Whole towns had disappeared beneath lava and ash. Naples, the birthplace of Enrico Caruso, was threatened. In response to the Vesuvius disaster, a series of meetings began among prominent San Franciscans. They had reason to fear their own city's destruction by natural disaster. The city had burned to the ground 6 times since 1850. Now, Fire Chief Sullivan warned about their dependence on water from distant reservoirs.
Chief Sullivan is thought to be one of the most brilliant fire chiefs San Francisco's ever had. And in the face of what he felt was inadequate preparation of the water system, he had devised all sorts of plans, which he kept pretty much in his head, that how the fire department would react to this kind of a disaster.
But on April 17th, it was hard to dwell on disaster. It was unseasonably warm for San Francisco. Bright sunshine was chasing the fog from the hills, burnishing the Victorian rooftops. A rare day indeed for usually soggy April. Later on, this would be called earthquake weather. That night, Caruso sang the role of Don Jose in Carmen. San Franciscans were transported by his magnificent voice, if not his dumpy physique. He looked more like a butcher than a romantic hero. Caruso had a few choice things of his own to say about San Francisco. His suite at the palace looked like a coffin. The women wore too much jewelry. They seemed to be trying too hard. That night was remembered as a feverish time in the old city. People were sleepless. The streets and bars were thronged late into the night.
People tended to be awake for some reason, and we believe that may have been a pre-shock of some nature, woke them up.
Shortly after 5 in the morning, there was a mysterious disturbance in the ocean. Ships reported sudden high seas and explosive shocks to their hulls. The captains were mystified. There had been a dead calm in the water. At Ocean Beach in San Francisco, a man named Clarence Judson was taking his usual morning swim. Suddenly, he noticed a strange luminescence in the water. Something beneath the waves appeared to be glowing. When he got back to the beach, he found he could no longer stand. The sand was rolling like the surface of the ocean. In the city itself, early risers saw the actual shock wave as it rolled down Washington Street.
It starts in one place and it ruptures along the fault at a couple miles a second, like a gigantic freight train ripping through California.
The earth shook horribly for 22 seconds, paused, then shook for 23 more. Then came an awful silence before the screaming of the injured and dying began.
The wrath of God will continue here on the History Channel.
Like all Americans, I like big things. Big prairies, big forests and mountains, big wheat fields, and everything else.
There's a message from all of us at TWA.
We're a new airline. We're getting back to the basics.
On time, reliable. That's the new TWA.
Have you seen our new planes?
New paint job is beautiful.
It stands out. It's stunning.
And I think it represents the new culture that's growing at TWA.
We're working hard to take good care of you. We're going to give you the kind of service that brings you back.
We've got the experience and we know how to do this.
The business travelers are going to love this.
We want you to come back.
That's the message. TWA, Trans World Airlines.
We want to be your airline.
Excuse me, think your disposable razor shaves as comfortably as his Gillette Sensor Excel? Yeah, well, try Sensor Excel. It'll change your mind. After one shave with Sensor Excel, we bet you don't go back. Because only Sensor Excel has protective micropins for extra comfort. Wow. And self-adjusting blades for extra closeness. Disposables don't. And Sensor Excel gives more shaves per blade than any disposable.
Excuse me.
Take the Sensor Excel challenge. Bet you don't go back to disposables.
Hey, I want my Sensor Excel back. Hey, hey!
At the Principal Financial Group, you'll find the strength of our investment performance is your 401k retirement advantage. You'll find our flexibility will meet your insurance needs, and you'll find the balance of choice and quality you need in health coverage. For over a century, you've trusted the Principal for strength, flexibility, and balance in retirement, insurance, and financial products. At the Principal, we give you an edge.
The wrath of God continues here on the History Channel.
The great earthquake had come in two separate jolts at 5:13 a.m. The hills of San Francisco swayed. The earth flowed like quicksand. Buildings joined the dance until they collapsed, exhausted. The quake rattled houses as far away as Nevada and Oregon and caused extensive damage throughout Central California.
Santa Rosa, for example, which was a small market town at that time, was virtually devastated by both the earthquake and a fire. Palo Alto, where Stanford University is, was absolutely devastated. 112 people died just at Agnew State Hospital, which is outside of San Jose.
The insane asylum at Agnew State Hospital was a place of horrors. Many inmates were crushed, but many more were liberated. The surrounding countryside was alive with mental patients, plunged further into madness by the great earthquake. 35 miles north, parts of San Francisco lay in ruins.
You have one section of 6th Street where the buildings fell like dominoes and then collapsed. The last building collapsed into the street, 6th and Howard. You've probably lost 300 or 400 people there.
One of the most dramatic images of the earthquake came from City Hall. This had been the largest government building in the western U.S. Now, its great dome hung precariously over a shattered base. Mayor Schmitz gazed on this solemn sight in the early morning hours. To him, perhaps, the building looked as vulnerable as his own administration. At the time of the quake, a campaign was in motion to remove the mayor from office. People had had enough of the corruption at City Hall. A bigger target than Schmitz was his political mentor, Abraham Roof. In the shadowy tradition of the city's so-called boss politics, Roof held no real office. Yet as he controlled the bribes and the favors, he all but owned San Francisco. The mayor was deemed an inconsequential figure, a puppet to Boss Roof. But when the crisis was upon San Francisco, it was Schmitz who took control.
Mayor Schmitz, as early as 9 o'clock, I believe, had a fairly good handle on how serious it was, because by that time he had issued his infamous shoot to kill proclamation. So there was a sense it was pretty bad.
Other extreme measures were underway to quell the threat of looting. War hero General Frederick Funston pitched in his troops.
He lived up on Jones Street near the top of Nob Hill. He could see the fires burning. And he sent unilaterally a note out to Fort Mason and brought the troops into San Francisco to assist the police.
There was only one problem with Funston's action. It was illegal. He had no authority to intervene in the affairs of local government, in effect, to declare martial law. Aside from the sporadic looting, and despite the continuing aftershocks, most thought the worst was over. In some parts of the city, a holiday spirit prevailed. San Franciscans adored a spectacle, and today there were many curious and grotesque new scenes for sightseers to take in. The press were having a field day covering the disaster, and in many cases, magnifying it. In this picture, a reporter files his story in the open air, a few feet away from the fresh graves of earthquake victims. But the press and the gawkers were seeing only the symptoms, not the disease. The real damage done to San Francisco was underground. The huge iron water mains that fed the city from the southern reservoirs had shattered.
They had a well-trained and well-prepared fire force. All the training in the world wasn't going to help in the face of no water.
Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan was said to have backup plans in the event of a water shortage. Unfortunately, he was one of the first casualties of the earthquake. The chimney of a building next to his firehouse had crashed through his second-floor bedroom, hurtling Sullivan and his wife to the ground floor.
So just at the time that his expertise is needed, he is lying mortally wounded in his basement. And so the fire department, in this moment of greatest catastrophe, is without a leader.
By now, tendrils of flame were beginning to snake through the heaped debris of the city.
The fires begin in those areas hardest hit by the shaking, and that again is south of Market and the waterfront. If you look at all of the great panorama pictures of San Francisco, you will see the fires coming from the south of Market Street towards Market.
Dozens of small fires grew into one general conflagration. Soon, sheets of flame 200 feet high swept across Market Street to the commercial district, consuming $6 million of property an hour and hundreds of lives.
There's one story that's told about people being trapped inside of a wooden building that collapsed on them and whatever. They said they were all right, but they were pinned down. They could not get out. Well, they figured, somebody would be along pretty soon, the fire department, somebody would be along and free us. Well, before that could happen, the fire got there and they were burned alive.
Then there was the ham and eggs fire. The ill-advised cooking of breakfast in a ruined fireplace is supposed to have started this tragic blaze. Soon it streaked across Market Street to the Civic Center.
That's the fire that destroyed City Hall, That's the fire that jumped Market Street. That's the fire that rolled into the Mission.
The Palace Hotel, true to its promise, had come through the quake unscathed. Now, her staff was wetting down the floors of the hotel in preparation for the second test. Fire. The fire reached the palace by 2 o'clock. For a time, it was met with a wall of water. The palace was said to have as much water in its private cisterns as the rest of San Francisco at that moment. It wasn't enough. Flames now leaped into the upper windows and began feeding on expensive woodwork. The supposedly fireproof palace burned in minutes. At the same time, the palace's most famous tenant laid a curse on the city. Enrico Caruso vowed that he would never again sing in San Francisco, and he kept his promise. With no water, firefighters resorted to a controversial tactic, dynamiting some city blocks in order to save others.
Keep in mind, dynamite was what invented in the late 1880s or 1890s. This is 1906, so you did not have much experience with the use of dynamite. And so there seems to be no doubt about the fact that dynamite was totally irrelevant in stopping the fire and actually may have been counterproductive.
Mayor Schmidt supported the use of dynamite, but only on buildings immediately threatened by fire. In most cases, flames simply jumped the fire break. But now the situation was desperate. The main fire was sweeping towards the Western Addition, the only large section of the city left unburned. In its path was fashionable Van Ness Avenue, lined with some of the most expensive mansions in the city. Dynamite them, the mayor ordered.
Here it was decided to find a natural fire break line, dynamite everything advancing towards that on one side of that line, and hope that the fire wouldn't jump then this wide line.
I knew people who were actually on the fire line at Van Ness Avenue. They were literally on the roofs of buildings with gloves on, stamping out sparks that were landing on the roofs of the building. And there they used everything, bare fists and shovels and water and dirt and everything to stop that blaze. As it was, 6 blocks west of Van Ness Avenue were destroyed, but they contained it.
Dynamite and a heroic stand by the fire department saved the Western Addition. But the wealthy homeowners of Van Ness never forgave the mayor for sacrificing their homes. It was one more nail in his political coffin. Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan ended up surviving the city he served, but just barely. On April 22nd at 1 p.m., Sullivan died of his injuries sustained during the earthquake. Old San Francisco was gone. Her majestic skyline was now a charred skeleton, surrounded by acres of scorched earth. Nearly every one of her great hotels, financial centers, and government buildings was gone. Officially, 478 people had died, a probable undercount that is controversial to this day.
I feel that the number is going to be somewhere around 3,000. Those who died in collapses, those who might have been shot, caught diseases based upon the earthquake, those who were taken by ferry boat to Vallejo or died on Goat Island, died in Oakland, died in San Jose, died in Chicago because they were taken by train.
But even greater seismic events were on the horizon, including a temblor 10 times more powerful than the San Francisco earthquake. On Good Friday, 1964 would come, the shock of the century.
First jolt hurled us down onto the bottom landing. The second jolt dumped us into the snowbank, face forward, and we simply were thrown onto the ground, into the snow.
The wrath of God will continue here on the History Channel.
My husband and I both work, but when there's a problem with the kids or around the home, I'm usually the one to deal with it. But it's not just me they depend on. It's my income, too. If anything ever happened to me, State Farm can help make sure their future is secure. If you want to talk life insurance with somebody who knows what they're talking about and knows how to listen, talk to a State Farm agent.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Excuse me, think your disposable razor shaves as comfortably as his Gillette Sensor XL? Yeah, well, try Sensor XL. It'll change your mind. After one shave with Sensor XL, we bet you don't go back. Because only Sensor XL has protective micropins for extra comfort. Wow. And self-adjusting blades for extra closeness. Disposables don't. And Sensor XL gives more shaves per blade than any disposable.
Excuse
me. Take the Sensor XL challenge. Bet you don't go back to disposables.
Hey, I want my Sensor XL back. Hey, hey!
Green Acres is the place to be. Farm living is the life for me.
I just adore a penthouse view. Darling, I love you, but give me Park Avenue.
The chores.
The stores.
Fresh air.
Times Square.
Ford Explorer. It's at home, anywhere.
My mommy works really hard. She goes to work every day. She has to make money so we can buy stuff.
At State Farm, we understand how important your income is to your family's well-being.
Mom works so I can go to college.
Life is full of surprises. We'll help you develop a life insurance plan that isn't.
We need a lot of money.
State Farm understands life.
I'm her child, and Mom loves her child.
A History Channel world premiere. You've just been hurt. You need help. But the nearest rescue is 200 years away. From 1721 to 911, trace the history of law enforcement and rescue on the road. Wheels of Survival on History Alive with Roger Mudd. Begins Tuesday, June 17th at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on the History Channel, where the past comes alive.
The Wrath of God continues here on the History Channel.
The 1906 earthquake and fire had far-reaching political aftershocks. First, there was the matter of Chinatown. The neighborhood had been incinerated by the Great Fire. City fathers saw this as an opportunity to rid the city of the Chinese and to open up the valuable land where Chinatown had stood. 6 days after the earthquake, an order was issued to remove the Chinese to the farthest end of the city.
The city government was hoping to move the Chinese out of what was then known as Chinatown into an area which is quite a ways further south into what is known as the Bayfield Hunter Point area.
If the government expected the Chinese to go quietly, they were wrong. A storm of protest arose from America's Asian community. Then Los Angeles weighed in with a counteroffer. The upstart city to the south recognized the value of Chinatown as a tourist attraction. Now it invited all of San Francisco's Chinese to relocate to Los Angeles. Amid the controversy, the edict was withdrawn. Chinatown was rebuilt on the spot where it had stood.
The story that is favorite for the Chinese is the fact that we were smart enough to get started right away and rebuild Chinatown and not get sent down to Bayfield Hunters Point. It took vision.
San Francisco had much better luck removing the thieves from City Hall. Charges of corruption still hung over Mayor Schmitz, despite his heroic leadership during the crisis. The indictments came down at Christmas time. Handsome Jean was removed from the mayor's office. Boss Ruth went to jail. City fathers boasted that San Francisco's political house cleaning had been as thorough as the physical cleaning by fire. At the same time, the spin doctors of the day were going to work on the public perception of the disaster. The earthquake was played down.
In fact, the Board of Realtors, a few days after the earthquake, passed a resolution saying they would not call it the Great Earthquake, that they would call it the Great Fire. Why? It's strictly business. If you frighten people to the degree that they lose confidence in San Francisco would not be rebuilt. We would be no more than a fishing pueblo on the edge of the Pacific.
Much more than a fishing pueblo was on display in the World's Fair of 1915. In just 9 years, the city had re-established itself as the cultural showplace of the West. San Francisco had put the great earthquake and fire behind it. Most people, in fact, thought the quake had been the lesser of the two evils. The city was as unmindful as ever of the seismic danger lurking below. But before another great quake would happen here, one would strike much farther north. The next big one was 58 years away. In geologic time, less than a heartbeat. In 1964, Alaska still seemed north of nowhere, but slowly it was going places. Alaska's hard-won statehood had come in 1959. It came over the objection of the southern states, who didn't want more northern votes in this era of civil rights legislation. Texans had a second motive. They didn't want to give up their status as the largest state. Statehood was cause for celebration. In territorial times, Alaska was a remote fiefdom of the federal government. Now, it had a vote in its own destiny, and Alaskans were a people with a powerful taste for self-reliance.
The statehood took the shackles off of us. It's as much spiritual as anything else. The economy of Alaska became dynamic right then. Soon after that, you could darn near see it.
Among the most welcome signs of progress was Anchorage's first department store, JCPenney's, and its first exclusive residential development. Turn Again by the Sea was spectacularly located on the bluffs overlooking Cook Inlet. Towering on the horizon were the snow-capped mountains and volcanoes of the Alaskan Range. What lay below Turn Again was a different story. The development was built on a bed of blue clay, which some feared would liquefy during an earthquake. And Alaska had a long history of giant shakes. Since the gold rush year of 1899, Alaska had experienced 3 earthquakes of magnitude 8.0 or greater. 3 earthquakes roughly the size of the San Francisco quake. Even more devastating were the tsunamis that followed large quakes. The tsunami, or seismic sea wave, is one of nature's most awesome forces. But earthquakes and tsunamis were taken in stride by most Alaskans. Like the long winters and the black flies of summer, they were just more facts of life in a sometimes harsh environment. They were the price they paid for the spectacular scenery. On March 27, 1964, Alaska was to learn how great was that price. On Good Friday, 1964, there was something like an Alaskan heat wave, 28 degrees in Anchorage and clear. The unusually warm weather would later be interpreted as a sign of things to come. At noontime, schools and many businesses closed for the Catholic Holy Day. At 5:30 p.m., Mass was being celebrated all over Alaska when suddenly the churches began to shake.
About the time the rumbling started, Christ was about to die on the cross, so it was very prophetic for us and had a big impact on me, certainly at age 13.
I felt like the entire earth was shaking, and in fact, that the earth was going to fall apart, and it was the end of the world.
From the first, it was a very intense earthquake, but this was nothing new for Alaskans. They waited for the shaking to stop, as it always did, after a few seconds. But this one didn't stop. It intensified.
You could see the rolls in the earth like the earth had become water. And at that moment, I started saying the Lord's Prayer. For me, it was an immediate realization that this was way beyond anything that was understandable.
For 5 interminable minutes, the shaking continued, splitting open trees, houses, and roads, opening crevices in the ground that swallowed cars and people. But as at San Francisco, there were even greater horrors to come after the earthquake. Huge volumes of water were rushing out of the Alaskan bays just before the tsunamis rushed in.
The wrath of God will continue here on the History Channel.
Are you sitting on $600 every month?
Your place looks gorgeous, Matilda. Found money in the backyard. It's money from my house, Grace. Ain't that nice?
Are you just getting by?
After all these years of putting money in the house, now I'm taking money out. Only I still own the house.
Nice deal.
It's a reverse mortgage called house money. Every month a check arrives. Really? It's a loan against the value of my house. I get a check a month forever, and not a penny has to be repaid until I leave the house. Could I do that? Yes, Grace, as long as your house is worth $75,000 or more, and you're 65 or over. Way over. Jen!
What would you do with $600 every month? House money from Transamerica Home First. Why wait to enjoy life? For a free information kit, call 1-800-262-1176.
History Alive will return in a moment here on the History Channel.
Oh, you beautiful dreamboat, you.
Shift into the past Thursday nights as the History Channel presents Automobiles.
I owe much to those who have pioneered and developed the automobile.
Travel down yesterday's back roads to the days when the streets had no names, or to the times when we believed the bigger the better.
Why, it's as wide as a bowling alley in there.
Automobiles, Thursdays at 10 Eastern, 11 Pacific on the History Channel.
Every month, the compelling true stories of extraordinary people. From A&E comes Biography Magazine. In the June issue, Winona Ryder. Order now, and with your paid subscription, receive The Best of Cusco, available on higher octave music. Enjoy an entire year for only $18. Call 1-800-831-1616 and order Biography Magazine, because every life has a story.
The wrath of God continues here on the History Channel.
I have no connections at all, Don, with Anchorage.
I don't think there's anything that can prepare you for a 9.2 magnitude earthquake that lasts 5 minutes. It exceeds your imagination. It exceeds any fear you've ever experienced in a roller coaster. Any kind of real terror that you've ever exposed yourself to.
We realized that it had to be widespread because it was so strong. And there was curiosity, there was excitement, there was fear. There was the knowledge that we were in the middle of something really big and important and different.
March 27th, 1964. The earth had shaken, the ground had opened, and Alaskans were reeling from a 9.2 magnitude earthquake, the longest and strongest ever recorded in the United States.
And my house got farther away from me and closer, and my neighbor's house got closer to me and farther away, and everything was changing because the whole earth was moving.
The homes at Turnagain rode an avalanche of liquefied mud. Some moved as much as 1,200 feet from their foundations. In downtown Anchorage, 4th Street had sunk 12 feet into the earth. The concrete facade of J.C. Penney's had fallen off, killing a man.
But facade on the building, these big concrete panels were slamming into the street, and the car that I had originally been looking at was under one of those panels.
And it still had the engine running, and it flattened it right down like a pancake. And in the debris, at night, when all the city was dark, the only thing you see down the 4th Avenue, they said, was his little turn indicator blinking on and off.
It was a rough night because there were so many aftershocks. We were able to pick up on the radio KING from Seattle, and they talked about the devastation in Alaska. They talked about all of Anchorage is gone, and made it sound as though we were about the only survivors where we were in the east part of Anchorage. So, you know, we didn't realize that they were exaggerating or that their sources were incomplete. All we knew was that most of Alaska had disappeared in this horrendous earthquake.
In the gathering darkness of the early evening, Alaskan towns were badly shaken, but they had not been swallowed by the earth as some reports had it, nor were there many fatalities as a direct result of the earthquake. The real killer of the day still hadn't surfaced. It lay in wait in the waters outside the coastal settlements of Alaska. Alaskans knew that giant quakes were often followed by tsunamis, sometimes called tidal waves. After riding out the earthquake, the people of Seward and Kodiak started moving to higher ground. But Valdez never got a head start. A landslide in Prince William Sound started a local seismic wave that engulfed the town in minutes. The earthquake was hardly over when the tsunami struck.
Again, we repeat, the entire port facility has just been wiped out. There simply isn't a port there anymore.
John Kelsey owned the dock in Valdez and was the last one to ever walk off it.
I couldn't believe it. It was probably one of the most sickening feeling when I looked out and I saw that the docks were gone, and I assumed the worst, which is what happened. I assumed that many people would probably not have survived it.
28 longshoremen died when the Valdez docks were swept into Prince William Sound by a wave 200 feet high.
The loss of life had a great impact on me because I knew every one of the folks that worked for us. It's something I don't think I'll ever fully reconcile.
At Seward, the wave came almost 3 hours after the quake. By that time, most people thought the crisis was over. They came down from the safety of the heights, only to be swept away by a 50-foot wave that seemed to come out of nowhere. When the water receded, oil refineries exploded. Seward burned almost to the ground. The plague of tsunamis was by far the biggest killer of the day.
People getting killed in Seward, people getting killed in Whittier, people getting killed in all of these other places. So 115 people dead, 106 tsunami.
Valdez, wrecked first by earthquake, then tsunami, had one more wave of destruction to deal with. This one at the hands of geologists. Valdez had been built on a gravel bed left by a retreating glacier, which is among the most unstable of ground. Geologists made the decision to move the town site entirely. The new Valdez was built 4 miles away on the topsoil above bedrock. The old Valdez became a desolate ghost town, finally burning down in a series of fires. In the dawn of the day after the Good Friday earthquake, a pilot flew over Turnagain by the sea. What had been Alaska's most exclusive residential community was now a site of unearthly ruin. But somewhere in the sea of shattered mud, the pilot saw an island of hope.
When he flew over Turnagain, he saw all this rubble, and he didn't think anything could have possibly survived. And then they saw the little blanket, and they came in closer, and on that blanket, amidst all of this broken up ground, were these little children. And it was improbable. There was just no way this one little undisturbed piece of ground could have existed, and yet it did, with us on it. And he said that was when he believed that there had to be the existence of God.
After the earthquake, the area around Turnagain was abandoned for many years. Much of it was turned into a city park. Although now much overgrown, you can still see the violence of the '64 earthquake in the twisted hummocks and gaping depressions in the exposed blue clay. Ominously, they're starting to rebuild again on the clay of Earthquake Park.
It's a very prestigious area to live in. People with money and power personally choose to take that risk. They say, this is my money, this is my land, this is my choice, this is my risk. But after you're gone, the house is going to be there, another person will move there. You know, that you actually, by creating the neighborhood, you're creating risk for the next, 200 years, for as long as people are there.
While Alaska waited for its next big quake, California would be hit again. This time in a double hammer blow that would strike both its major cities within 5 years. After 80 years of relative silence, the granddaddy of all earthquake zones, the San Andreas Fault, started to slip again.
The wrath of God will continue here on the History Channel.
Have you outgrown your current position or find yourself unemployed? Then it's time to look in the National Business Employment Weekly. You'll find top jobs with top companies and advice on landing them. Order 10 issues for only $44 and you'll get interviewing and a bonus issue free. Look in the National Business Employment Weekly. You never know what you'll find.
To subscribe, call 800-225-3300. That's 800-225-3300.
Here in West Virginia, we've tested all of our activities for maximum family fun. Everything has been tested and retested to make sure your West Virginia vacation will be the best your family has ever had. So call today for more information and test out West Virginia for yourself.
And who the devil are you, sir?
Lieutenant Sharp, sir.
After Sir Henry lost their flag to the French, Sharp and his men are out for revenge. See the battle, meet the author.
So much regimental pride is tied up in this, that if you lose your flag, you lose honor, you lose face. It's very shameful.
And now it's up to Sharp to restore the honor of his regiment and capture the French army's coveted Golden Eagle. Sharp's Eagle on Movies in Time. Next on the History Channel.
The brand new limited edition Disney Winnie the Pooh postage stamps are now available. The International Collectors Society is now offering the only collector set ever issued to commemorate the evolution of Winnie the Pooh from a real bear born in Winnipeg, Canada, to a cartoon icon beloved around the world. Demand for this limited edition set has been so overwhelming, experts are already predicting this set will be prized by you and your loved ones for generations to come. Not available at your local post office, you can only get them through this special television offer. The complete set of stamps is only $9.95. You'll also receive a numbered certificate of authenticity and a protective display holder. But that's not all. When you order, you'll also get this beautiful Disney Winnie the Pooh airmail stamp, an $8 value absolutely free. Remember, you get the legal tender Disney Winnie the Pooh stamps, a numbered certificate of authenticity, and protective display holder, all for $9.95. And when you act now, you'll also receive this stunning Disney Winnie the Pooh airmail stamp, an $8 value, absolutely free. There's a limit of 6 per household. Call toll-free now.
The wrath of God continues here on the History Channel.
The cities of the West Coast appear to exist in a state of seismic denial.
People have an unfortunate tendency to build cities where the great earthquakes are going to occur. The earthquakes create the mountains, the valleys, the harbors, the great coastlines. So earthquakes create the places to build cities. People build cities there, and put them at greatest risk from the earthquakes. So the cities at greatest risk in California are San Francisco and Los Angeles because they're built in the most active places.
San Francisco, October 17th, 1989. The earth had moved and fires were burning out of control. For a moment, it was like 1906 all over again. The ground beneath the city's marina district had failed. Water mains had shattered. Fire was on the move through the historic neighborhood.
We were lucky that there was not a heavy wind on it because it would have probably moved at a much greater speed. They were able to contain the fire in a particular area, aggressively fight that fire.
Elsewhere, a top span of the Bay Bridge collapsed, hurtling cars to the lower span. A 1-mile stretch of a double-decker freeway fell onto its lower level. Automobiles were crushed to within a few feet of the ground. More than 40 people were killed. This was the work of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake, a medium-sized shake that's a regular visitor in the area around the San Andreas Fault. But 5 years later, the next one came like a bolt of thunder out of a cloudless sky. The force that struck Los Angeles on January 17, 1994, came from a previously unknown fault that lay directly under the suburb of Northridge.
Earthquakes are like real estate. There are only three things that matter: location, location, and location. Northridge came out real strong on location.
It was 6.5 on the Richter scale. Not a large caliber quake, but Northridge had been hit point blank. The effect was as great in Los Angeles as if the big one had hit on the San Andreas Fault, some 70 miles away. This freeway exchange, rebuilt after being damaged in a 1971 Temblor, was supposedly quake-proof. It collapsed. The last person to travel this pavement was a motorcycle police officer who hurtled off the broken span in the darkness and died. One of the busiest freeways in the country, the Santa Monica Freeway, was also built to seismic standards. It also failed. This apartment building in Northridge became the death trap of the day. The top floor of the complex fell onto the lower floors, killing 16 people as they slept in their beds. At first, rescue crews passed the complex by, thinking it was a 2-story building.
What they didn't realize is that the first story of that 3-story apartment complex was completely collapsed. And it wasn't until the second drive-by that they actually determined that there was a structural collapse there of that magnitude.
And in the tent cities and across the nation, the questions began all over again. Why do people live in earthquake zones?
California is a very beautiful place to live. It's beautiful because of the San Andreas Fault system. San Andreas creates the beautiful coastline, the mountains, the harbors, the river valleys. The mountains capture the snow, and that's where the water comes from that makes California habitable. Without the San Andreas Fault system, California is a dry, featureless, uninteresting, uninhabited desert. So it's a dangerous place to live. It's a great place to live. The San Andreas is responsible for both.
What have we learned from the major quakes of the 20th century? Very much about why and where they're likely to strike, but very little about when.
Earthquake prediction, that's the toughest part of the problem. Earthquake prediction's like predicting the weather. It's only about 1,000 times harder. When you predict the weather, you can fly around in the clouds, you can measure what's going on. But earthquakes happen 10 or 15 miles down in the earth.
In the 9 decades since the Great San Francisco earthquake, seismology has grown to a mature science. We know how to fit structures to withstand seismic stress, even though these sometimes fail. We know where it's safe and unsafe to build houses, even when, as it turn again, we choose to ignore the lessons of history. But incomprehensible still is that moment of paralyzing fear when the subterranean thunder growls and the earth begins to roll under our feet.
One of the small towns hit hardest by the 1994 Southern California earthquake was Fillmore. More than two-thirds of its business district was leveled. But Fillmore went to work rebuilding, and in late 1996, the town held a festival to celebrate its total restoration, a rebuilding that was finished 2 years ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, the city building department recently cracked down on property owners who failed to have their buildings inspected for damage from the '94 quake. The department located 61 buildings that were missing inspection certificates. One of them was their own headquarters. For the History Channel, I'm Roger Mudd. Thanks for watching.
Now you can own a video cassette of this program. Call 1-800-708-1776 and you'll receive the program you've just seen for only $19.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-800-708-1776.
After a major battlefield debacle, Sharp and his men are out for revenge. Stay tuned for Sharp's Eagle, next on Movies in Time. And tomorrow night, we'll take you down Tornado Alley as Disasters in America continues on History Alive at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific.